A Midwest flea market. Elena, an Italian-American restorer, picks up a dusty 8mm movie camera. She wipes the lens and turns it on. Light trembles on the wall. The film runs. Soldiers appear. Thick white smoke. Screams. In the distance, gunshots. Then silence. The frame cuts off. Empty seconds. Scary. Elena's heart jumps. This isn't a home movie. It's a trace buried since the Vietnam War. That night, in a small garage, the secret of war returns, resting in the hands of an ordinary repairwoman. Elena lives in a small Midwestern town. People often see her in her family's old garage, hands greasy, tirelessly restoring things others call junk. Broken clocks, guitars with snapped strings, even wartime radios. To Elena, every object is a memory that needs saving. This passion is not random. Her grandfather was a U.S. soldier in World War II. He told her about compasses, radios, and maps he kept to the end of his life. Elena grew up with those stories. She learned to believe that in old things there is a spirit that never truly goes away. The 8mm camera she found at the market made her heart race. The metal case had peeling paint, and the lens fogged like it was covered in mist. But it felt familiar, like the items her grandfather kept in a wooden chest. She set the camera on the workbench in the garage. A yellow lamp shone down, rain pattered outside. Elena opened her toolbox and began cleaning each part. The body of the camera vibrated slightly when she oiled the gears. A clicking sound echoed, crisp and unsettling. Her friend Rachel stopped by. Rachel laughed and pulled up a plastic chair to sit. "Another dead thing you want to bring back to life?" Rachel teased. Elena smiled a little, eyes still on the camera. Not dead, just waiting to be woken. They tested the camera. A dim white light spilt onto the blotchy wall. A shaky image appeared. At first, they were only shadowy figures. Then white smoke rolled in. Screams rang out. Far off, there seemed to be gunfire. Suddenly, the image cut. The screen went black. Rachel's eyes widened. "Oh my God, that looks like a war horror movie." Elena said nothing, gripping the crank. Her heart raced, cold sweat beading on her skin. This wasn't like any film she'd ever seen. The images were terrifyingly real. Rachel shivered and stood. "You should throw this out. This stuff, it's scary." Elena didn't answer. She slid back onto a stool. In her head, her grandfather's stories about soldiers and friends who never came home played again. Without meaning to, she felt the film might be a lost shard of a generation's memory. That night, after Rachel left, Elena rewound the film alone. A second time. A third time. Each viewing made her chest ache. It couldn't be a coincidence. It couldn't be just training footage. This was a message buried in time, and now it had found her. She set the camera aside and looked around the dark garage. A strange feeling spread through her. She had just opened a door and had no idea where it would lead. The next morning, Elena drove her old pickup to the town library. Few people came here, just a few older men reading the paper. She went to the archives and flipped through rolls of microfilm. The pages were yellowed, the type faded, but then a headline jumped out at her. "Training accident at Fort Bragg. 12 soldiers dead." The article was only a few paragraphs, with no photos and no follow-up. Everything is wrapped in the word accident. Elena bit her lip. What she had seen in the film was completely different. White smoke, screams, chaos, not a training exercise. She wrote down dates and locations. Flipping through more issues, she found another brief item from the same period. Cold War chemical experiments denied by Pentagon. A minor blip, quickly forgotten. Leaving the library, Elena felt uneasy. Back home, she opened her laptop and typed, "Vietnam War experiments, Fort Bragg cover-up." Dozens of results appeared. Most were shadowy blogs, but one Reddit thread stood out, r/military secrets. People debated Agent Orange and secret wartime projects. Elena made an anonymous account and posted, "Anyone heard of a 1968 gas test gone wrong?" A comment popped up. "My uncle served there. He always said it wasn't an accident. They used something new on the men." Scary stuff, Elena's heart hammered. She scrolled down and read more. Many dismissed it, but a few users claiming to be veterans told the same story. There were tests the government never acknowledged. Elena leaned back in her chair, her head spinning. The blurry frames and screaming voices echoed in her mind. The more she searched, the clearer the fear became. That night, she set the projector running again. Trying to freeze the image on small details, she spotted, shining behind a soldier, a metal plate. On it, a line of numbers was clearly etched. No mistaking it. A weapons depot code. Elena swallowed hard. This was no longer theory. This was direct evidence. She opened her laptop's webcam to take notes, but a chill ran through her. On the screen's reflection, she could see the silhouette of a pickup parked outside. Its lights were off, but someone was clearly inside. She shut the laptop, and her heart raced. The feeling of being watched began to creep in. Questions crowded her mind. Who filmed this reel? Why was it at the flea market? And most importantly, why did it end up in her hands? Elena knew she had stepped into a maze. The deeper she went, the less a way back there seemed to be. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the window made her heart jump. Early the next morning, when she stepped out to the garage, she found a folded note on the doorstep. Scrawled letters, black ink smeared, "Stop now before it's too late." Elena gripped the note tightly. Her hand shook. This was no longer imagination. Someone knew exactly what she was doing. That afternoon, she called Jack, a former friend who used to be an investigative reporter in Chicago. Jack listened in silence for a moment, then sighed. "Elena, listen. If this really involves the military, the Washington insiders, it's too dangerous. I can't get involved. You should drop it too. Believe me." The answer weighed heavily on Elena. She had hoped for an ally, but now felt only alone. That evening, while driving home, she noticed a black pickup truck trailing her. In the rearview mirror, a license plate from out of state glared back. The truck followed her for miles before finally turning off onto a dark road. Elena gripped the steering wheel, sweat dampening her forehead. She sped home and slammed the garage door shut. A chilling thought surged up. If they want to silence me, they can do it any time. Late at night, while rewinding the reel on her laptop, she heard a sound. The back window creaked open slightly. Elena snatched the small knife off the table. Outside, the darkness was silent, but the air carried the stench of threat. A sharp clack came from the front door. She ran to it. A stone rolled across the floor. Wrapped around it was another note. Final warning. Elena clenched the stone, her hand bone white. Fear rose like a tide, but at the same time a steely thought flared. If I stop now, the screams on that film will stay buried forever. She sat down at the table, opened the reel, and began writing notes on every detail, every face. Her eyes burned red from lack of sleep, but her gaze no longer trembled. Elena knew this game had gone beyond ordinary. She was just a small-town restorer, but maybe that was precisely why they hadn't expected her. And perhaps that was why the reel had found her. One Saturday night, Elena left the garage to have dinner with Rachel. When she returned, she froze. The garage lock had been forced. The door stood ajar, wind making it creak. She shoved it open. Inside, everything was chaos. The garage was trashed, papers everywhere, tools smashed, shards of glass scattered. Elena rushed to the corner table where the metal box holding the reel had been. She flipped the lid. Empty. Her chest clenched. A gut-wrenching loss. Everything she had guarded all this time, gone. Elena collapsed to her knees, hands clutching her head. In her mind, the screams from the reel echoed again, reminding her that those soldiers had been buried once more. After a long moment, she inhaled deeply and forced herself up. She began gathering papers, setting objects upright. While picking up a torn folder, she spotted a small USB drive that had fallen in the mess. Her eyes widened. It was the audio backup she had carefully saved, just in case. She plugged it into her laptop. The screen lit up. Only sound, no image. But it was enough to chill her spine. Screams, gunfire, the choking voices of young men. Elena closed her eyes, tears falling. At least, part of the truth still remained. She wiped her face and gripped the USB tightly. In her mind, her grandfather's voice echoed, "Justice isn't free, kiddo. You gotta fight for it." She straightened in her chair, opened her notebook, and began writing. Dates, numbers, the weapons depot code she had seen on the reel. The words shook but were strong. They can steal the tape, but not the truth. Outside, the wind howled, the garage door rattling. Elena stared into the night, her heart strangely calm. The fear was still there, but beneath it, a new conviction had taken root. That night, for the first time, she understood. The American dream wasn't only about living in peace. It was also the right to know the truth and demand justice. And she, a simple restorer, would not give up. In the days after the break-in, Elena felt like a ghost. The garage stood silent, and there was nothing left but wreckage. She replayed the USB again and again, the screams looping until they haunted her. Each time, her heart tore a little more. One rainy night, as Elena slumped over the table, there came a knock at the door. 3 knocks, short and firm. She grabbed the small knife, heart pounding. Slowly, she opened the door. Before her stood an older man, thin, his raincoat soaked, his eyes strangely bright. "You're Elena?" he asked quietly. "The one who found the camera?" She froze. "Who are you?" The older man stepped inside and sat down on a wooden chair. He placed a thick envelope on the table. Inside were several reels of film and some old photographs. One showed a group of young engineers standing in front of rows of metal containers with military logos. He pointed to himself in the picture. "I'm Samuel," he said, "an engineer on a Pentagon project. In 1968, we took part in a secret test. They called it training, but really it was a trial of a new gas. Those soldiers, they never knew they were just test subjects." Elena sat rigid, hand clenched on the knife. "Why did you come to me?" Samuel lowered his gaze, his eyes blurred with tears. "Because that camera used to be mine. I secretly filmed the test, planning to expose it. But they found out. I had to run. I hid the camera in an old garage. Years later, someone must have sold it, and you were the one who found it." He looked up, voice thick with grief. "I lost my son in the war. Because of secrets like this. I can't let them be forgotten." Elena stared at him, pain and hope swirling in her chest. She quickly pulled out her phone and typed his name and date of birth. A news clipping appeared. Samuel R. Carter, former Pentagon engineer, vanished after 1969 hearings. The information matched. She let go of the knife. "What do you want from me?" Samuel slid the reels toward her. "Continue where I stopped. I'm old. I have nothing left to lose, but you can still speak." Elena looked at the new reels, her hand trembling. She had thought she was alone, but now in front of her sat a living witness, a piece of history never told. Outside, the rain poured, harder, drumming on the tin roof like a beating drum. Elena whispered, "If I do this, they'll come for me." Samuel nodded. "Yes, but if you don't, then they've already won." At that moment, Elena knew that the only road left was forward. The garage was pitch dark. Only the desk lamp lit the reels lying between Elena and Samuel. He drew a deep breath, his voice shaky but steady. They called it Project Dawn, a top-secret program during the Cold War. They feared the Soviets would get ahead, so they tried to create a gas that could disable hundreds of soldiers in minutes. But to test it, they used US soldiers. Told them it was a training exercise. Then released the gas right on top of them. Elena shuddered. "So what I saw on the film," Samuel nodded, "was that moment. The screams, the white smoke, the young men panicking. I was outside the test zone, ordered to supervise. I knew it was a crime, so I filmed it. I wanted to keep proof. But when I tried to go public, they found out. I disappeared from government records that day." He opened an old folder and pulled out several printed emails from a deceased colleague's computer. One line read, "If this leaks, careers are over. Keep Carter quiet." Elena took it, heart hammering. The proof wasn't just images, it was black and white on paper. She whispered, "But why me? Why was I the one to find it?" Samuel looked at her, his clouded eyes still shining. "Because you chose to listen. Many saw that camera and passed it by, but you didn't. And you remind me of my wife. She loved history, believed truth always returns. When I saw you, I knew the flame could go on." Elena was silent, her throat tight. Samuel leaned closer, whispering, "But we don't have much time. They know I'm alive, and now they know you're holding the secret too." At that moment, a dry, crackling noise came outside the door, like footsteps crunching on gravel. Elena shot up, heart pounding. Samuel pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. The garage fell into tense stillness. Through the crack of the door, headlights flashed, sweeping across, then cut out. An engine roared. A car pulled away into the night. Samuel exhaled hard, shoving the reels back into the envelope. "We have to go." Right now, Elena clutched the USB in her hand and looked at him. In that instant, she understood. This truth was no longer just a story of the past. It had become a battle in the present, and she, though terrified, could not turn away. 2 days later, Elena and Samuel quietly took a bus to Washington, D.C. In their bag was an envelope holding the reels, the USB, and printed emails. Samuel trembled, but his eyes were firm. Elena gripped his hand, telling herself there was no turning back. The independent investigative newsroom received them in a small office. When the footage played on the screen, the room went silent. Screams, smoke, chaos. The terrified faces of young soldiers then went into a white haze. A reporter shot to his feet. "This isn't training. This is a crime." Immediately, the team went to work. They verified records and cross-checked congressional documents. Within days, the story exploded on the front page. Bold headline: Project Dawn, the secret gas test on U.S. soldiers. The news spread across America. Television replayed the blurry frames, letting the public see the truth with their own eyes. Families of the soldiers gathered in front of cameras, many breaking down in tears. After 50 years, their sons were finally no longer labeled as accident victims. Elena watched it all from her motel room. Her phone rang non-stop with threats, but she no longer trembled. Because now the truth wasn't in one person's hands. It belonged to the entire nation. Thousands poured into the streets of Washington. They held up photos of soldiers, chanting, "Justice for the forgotten soldiers." Banners filled the avenues. Congress was forced to open emergency hearings. Elena blended into the crowd. An elderly mother took her hand, eyes red. "Thank you. My son's name can finally be spoken with honor," Elena choked up, only able to nod. On TV, a familiar face appeared. Bob Woodward, a symbol of investigative journalism. He spoke briefly. "This proves one voice, if brave enough, can wake a nation." Samuel sat beside Elena, his aged eyes brimming with tears. He whispered, "I thought I'd never live to see this day." The whole city roared. The images of young soldiers, the long-buried screams now echoed in Congress, on television, and in the hearts of Americans. Justice finally won. Elena looked at the sea of people flowing like waves. For the first time, she felt her fear dissolve, replaced by belief. Justice may be delayed, but it cannot stay buried forever. 1 year later, at the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C., a new gallery opened. Visitors lined up quietly. At the center, in a brightly lit glass case, sat the dusty 8mm camera. Beneath it, a bronze plaque read, "Truth Lives On, Project Dawn, 1968. Elena stood behind the crowd. She placed her hand against the cool glass, memories flooding back. The small garage at night, the flickering light, the screams on the reel. What she once thought only she knew had become the shared memory of a nation. A boy nearby asked his mother, "Why did they hide the truth?" The mother bowed and answered softly, "Because sometimes people fear justice, but truth always finds a way." Elena heard, her lips trembling faintly. Across the room, Samuel sat in a wheelchair looking frail. He stared at the camera for a long time, then turned to Elena and gave a slight nod. A month later, Samuel passed away in his sleep, at peace. His funeral was small and simple. Elena brought a single flower and laid it on his grave. In her heart, she knew he had carried the secret his whole life, only to finally see it released. The following spring, Elena started a small podcast, the title, Forgotten Histories. Each week she shared fragments of memory few spoke of, unsent letters from soldiers, music composed in camps, a medic's diary. Her voice was calm, plain, unadorned, and thousands listened. The podcast became her way of keeping alive the flame Samuel had passed to her. Not every story shook the nation, but every story, no matter how small, deserved to be remembered. One afternoon, after recording a live episode at the museum, Elena stopped again at the glass case. Sunset poured through the window, casting golden light on the old camera. It was no longer discarded junk. It was a symbol of memory and civic duty. Elena drew a deep breath and smiled softly. The fear that once haunted her had become her strength. She was no longer just an unknown restorer in a small garage. She had become a keeper of memory, a reminder to a generation that justice may be slow, but truth will always endure. If you believe in these values, join us at HumanKind Stories. Subscribe, share, so we can keep the flame alive.